I'll open with karakia, whakataka taho, ki te uru, whakataka taho, ki te tonga. Kia makina kina ka uta, kia matara tara ki tai, ehi ake a ate atukura, he hio, he huka, he hohu, tihe maudora. We have apologies from Councillor Hill and Councillor Mailing. Someone like to move they be received. Thank you. Move Councillor Dowler, seconded Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Right, at this point, just before we go to the public forum, and we have 3 people registered to speak. So we have Julian Eggers, Donald Horn and Matthias Schaffner. I have the pleasure of making an award to Gracie Quinney. So Gracie, if you'd like to just come forward, I shall walk around the table to the front. At that point, I probably won't have a microphone. So Gracie, those of you who've been here the last couple of years, we've done the thing for Mayors for Peace, and the last few years we've been really successful. This year, Gracie's award, for those who don't know, there's local kids across different age groups submit their artwork to be judged by the most important judge in the world. Who then picks, I think, 3 in each category, and they go off to Japan where they compete against entries from all over the world. So this year, Gracie has received a placing in that competition, as well as her contribution to the Mayors for Peace art competition. Also won a special sustainability award at the Cawthorne Student Science Fair. So for her work on solar power project. So really good. Nice to see you, Gracie. I'll duck down here now. So the artwork is the picture up here. It's also out the front in the foyer with a number of the other entries. So as you can see, pretty awesome piece of art that Gracie's created. So this is the 3rd place award from the Mayors for Peace competition. So congratulations, well done. There's a small voucher from us, and also one prize. If you'd like to turn it slightly this way, so that these might take a photo. Congratulations.
You shut the door, please, board. Thank you.
So, great positive way to start the day and the year for our first council meeting. So we'll now move on to the public forum. We've got a number of speakers, and I'll just go through the order they are on the agenda. So I'll start with Julian Eggers. Welcome, Julian. So we got 5 minutes, and
awesome, thank you. Can we all hear me? Cool. Alrighty, I would like to thank you for the privilege of allowing us to speak in front of you this morning. I'm Julian Eggers, the chairperson. Beside me is Tony Aldridge, the treasurer of the Wakefield Community Council. Together, Wakefield, our community, our council. Together for Wakefield, our community, our council. In 1973 was the birth of the Wakefield Ratepayers Association, now known as the Wakefield Community Council. With 50 years of service in Wakefield, the Wakefield Community Council stands dedicated to the betterment of the community and strives to uphold our objectives as an incorporated society. We constantly encourage community engagement, welcoming all to join us on our mission to build a more connected, resilient and forward-thinking Wakefield. I strongly believe being in my position as chair is to advocate the best for not only the Wakefield Community Council, but for our incredible Wakefield community. Working in partnerships with different organisations, people and groups within our beautiful area has shown the strengths to see the greater purpose. The strength of love, we stand together. the number and people we can achieve greater. I am privileged to continue growing our networks, not only through the community council, but through the incredible support systems of you, the team of the Tasman District Council. Christine, Dan, and Mike, as well as Stuart, have been an amazing advocates on our behalf, showing so much faith in our purpose and seeing our district grow. The support and guidance from not only our ward councillors, but from the wider Tasman District Council has been a blessing. I can only say positive and great things about my interactions with council staff. It's important for me to keep a positive, open, two-way relationship with the council for the best interests of Wakefield. Oh, am I too close? Last year challenged our resilience as a community organisation, as it was a challenging time, as it was regarding strong points of views within our community. My management committee of 12 band together, and now we are stronger to safeguard the ongoings of our community council for the best future to advocate Wakefield. As we all play our part in the functioning of the Wakefield Community Council, diversity and knowledge, age and wisdom and passion towards our community is not only special but unique. We have done Wakefield justice and given it a voice and see not only for the now but for the future. 50 wonderful years we continue to thrive. As you have read in our end of year report, which was attached to your agenda, we have accomplished key partnerships, supported projects, and made opportunities and became a network to benefit the growth and well-being of our community. Coming into 2024, we are proud to have a membership of 79 people, a massive achievement for us, the Wakefield Community Council, as we grow and engage with our people. 2024 looks like a great year for us, continuing the partnerships new and old with projects we are looking forward to, which are taking guardianship of the Tasman Taste Trail between Pigeon Valley and Holt Valley, working with the TDC's Reserves Department on stage 1 of the Fulton's Bush Playground project, working in partnership with the Waimea South Community Facility Charitable Trust in the works of the new Wakefield Community Hub project, working group planning a Resilient Expo to better prepare our community in April, supporting the Wakefield Police by adding additional surveillance cameras in the Wakefield ANZAC service. As you can see, we are a proactive, open, community-minded collective of local Wakefield residents dedicated of advocating a better, vibrant community as Wakefield continues to grow. I personally want to thank you all for the incredible support we have received from advice, guidance, and financials through grants that help benefit our outreach, fostering connections and well-beings within the Wakefield community. We look forward to continuing our partnerships with the TDC through the ward councillors, council staff, and wider community. Wakefield is our place, community is our family. Let's work together hand by hand, side by side for the best outcomes for our special, unique village, the village of Wakefield.
Thanks very much, Julian. That's very good. No, good timing. And thank you very much for circulating your annual report for inclusion in the agenda so that people can see the work that you and it's all right, Mike. You got thanked several times during the presentation. So thanks very much for coming in and speaking to it. Really appreciate the work that you, the committee, and all the office holders on the Wakefield Community Council do. And understand it's been a challenging year, and nice to see that you're still here and smiling. So all good. Thank you. Next up, we have Donald Horn, and Donald is on Zoom. So Donald, welcome. Same thing, 5 minutes. Over to you.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, councillors. I want to address the Ombudsman's report published in October last year, entitled Open for Business. I want to ask what action Council has taken on the report. Has a copy of the report been supplied to each councillor? What formal discussion has Council had on the document? And what steps has Council taken to implement the clear and unequivocal recommendations made in the What Council Should Do Now section of the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. And so for councillors, the questions have also been received via email, and so Donald will receive a written answers to the questions that have been asked. Thank you, Donald, for coming along or attending via Zoom and speaking to your submission or points. Next up, we have Matthias Schaffner. Welcome, Matthias.
Can I start?
You certainly may.
Okay. Good morning. Your Legoima team released information to me that there was one code of conduct investigation last year against a member of the Motueka Community Board, and they said it was against board member Hughes. I've seen no public information about this, no agenda, and in no meeting. So this all happened behind closed doors, all confidential. But I think the public should be informed when there's such an investigation. What is it that Mr. Hughes has done? Is it about some posts on his private Facebook profile done in his private capacity? Cannot be, because it is in your code of conduct policy that there is, quote, a big difference in speaking on behalf of council and speaking about the council, and that council respects your rights to free speech, quote. And so what Mr. Hughes is doing in his private capacity is surely not subject to any code of conduct, right? What is it then that Mr. Hughes has done? Is it about his frustration that his questions are not sufficiently answered by staff? For example, he asked in 2019 about caravans and what makes them fixed to land. To my knowledge, he never got an answer to that question. But there have been many enforcement actions against people living in caravans. That's exactly the issue that Mr. Hughes wanted to understand for the last 5 years. So it cannot be this, because he acted clearly in the best interest of his community when he persistently tried to engage with staff. What is it that Mr. Hughes has done that he is now restricted to do his work properly? He is classified as an unreasonable complainant. The unreasonable complainant policy is, and these are your words, quote, an internal management policy unrelated to council governments. This policy regulates the interaction between staff and the public. So how is it legally possible that this policy can be used against an elected member when, to my latest information, this policy never went through full council? Another restriction was or is that Mr. Hughes' email communication is somehow blocked, filtered, or interfered with. How can an elected member do his job properly when he cannot speak freely with the community that he needs to serve? And to be clear, this is not about protecting staff or health and safety. He tried to send an email to himself and it was not working. What is it that Mr. Hughes has done that justifies the spending of $38,548 for external investigators? You spent $38,000 on a code of conduct investigation against an elected member without telling the public that you spent this amount and why. Compare this to the latest information from Statistics New Zealand. Yearly median income in the Tasman district, 29,000. And you spent 38 on a single code of conduct complaint. What do we say to the electricians, to the plumbers, to the car mechanics, to the farmers, to the cashier in supermarkets? What do we say to the single mom living on my street, raising 4 children with 3 part-time jobs? All these people have to work hard every single day. They have to fight for every single dollar. And their hard-earned money, which is barely enough, is then shared with others because of taxes and council rates. All the people in your organization, whether elected members or staff, you are paid by these hardworking people. But besides the question, what Mr. Hughes has done, more important is, what is the legal framework to start a code of conduct investigation in the first place? I have looked through all Motueka Community Board meetings since the last election, 2022, and I could not find anything that the board adopted a code of conduct policy. But then council said, quote, the board adopted the code in 2016, and this code continues to apply to current members of the board. Quote end. This statement was sent to local government to New Zealand, and they disagreed. They wrote back to you, council, quote, the code only applied to the board that was in place for that triennium. It does not have an ongoing life unless specifically endorsed by subsequent boards, which aligns with the principle that governments cannot bind their successors, quote end. After that, council came up with another idea, and your Legoima team released this to me, quote, the code was covered in a governance workshop, because of which they concluded that there was no opposition to the code continuing to apply, quote end. First of all, it's highly questionable that giving no opposition is legally the same as agreeing to adopt a code of conduct policy. But let's look at facts. Fact number 1, your Legoima team confirmed to me that during that governance workshop, board members were not provided with a code of conduct policy that was used to investigate Mr. Hughes. Fact number 2, your Legoima team confirmed to me that the governance workshop was held on the 13th of October 2022. Board members signed their statutory declaration and gave their oath of office on the 27th of October. This was 2 weeks after this governance workshop. Fact number 4. The Local Government Act states that elected members cannot act in a public capacity until they sign their statutory declaration, which makes sense and which means that during that governance workshop, board members were legally not in a position to express any opposition to any code of conduct policy. And now you say that the code of conduct applies because there was no opposition during this workshop. Really?
So you are now at 4.5 minutes. So
I have a 10-minute speaking slot. I have a 10-minute speaking slot. You want to read that I was granted the 10-minute speaking slot?
Oh, it's an organisation. Brilliant. Okay, carry on.
Thank you very much. Council, and including you, Mr. Mayor, were informed about all these legal uncertainties when the investigation started against Mr. Hughes, during the investigation, and again at the end of the investigation. But instead of addressing the concerns, there was always a new narrative why the code of conduct would apply to board members. And the last point of contact was a few weeks ago when a member of the public sent an email to the mayor about this topic. And Mr. Mayor, this is not criticizing you in any shape or form. You are entitled to have all your views and write emails in the way you want to write them. I'm not criticizing you. I'm here only presenting facts. And for this, I'd like to share one line from your response email. Quote, if Mr. Hughes has concerns, then he has the option to address this through the office of the Ombudsman or the High Court. Quote, and that's what you said, Mr. Mayor. And you know what? I will follow your advice. I will follow your advice and bring this matter to the High Court. And after the High Court has made a decision, I will come back into this room, but then we won't speak about a code of conduct complaint. Then we will speak about accountability. The Motueka community voted Mr. Hughes in this position in the last election. He got more votes than board member Graham, who is now the chair of the board. He got more votes than board member Hutt, who is now the deputy chair of the board. The public has decided, and they want to have Mr. Hughes in that position because of who he is and what he does. Board member Hughes has a pretty good track record when it comes to uncovering wrongdoings on local government level. We are all well aware of the Peach Island case, where it was Mr. Hughes found out that the council had buried cars into the ground, still with their fluids and chemicals inside. Hashtag resource management. I would like to believe that this code of conduct investigation is not discrimination against an elected member. And I would like to believe that this is not an attack on democratic principles. And I would like to believe that this is not the biggest corruption scandal that this institution has ever seen. I really would like to believe this. But in order to do so, we, the public, we need information, Mr. Mayor. And it is your duty, Mr. Mayor, to provide this information to the people that you need to serve, because your oath of office included to act in the best interest of the community. We are the community, Mr. Mayor, and the community is standing in front of you right here, right now. Thank you.
Right, we will move on with the agenda. So next up, declarations of interest.
Yeah,
Councillor Mackenzie.
thank you. I'd like to declare a declaration for, I think it was 7.3, the Golden Bay Kayaks. So I'll just sit back from that discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it'll be noted in the minutes. No further declarations. If not, we'll move on to the minutes. So there are a number of minutes. We'll start off with the minutes from the Tasman District Council meeting 13th of December 2023. Move Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Deputy Mayor Bryant. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. The extraordinary Tasman District Council meeting 24th of January. Move Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Kinnermonth. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. The extraordinary council meeting the 1st of February. Move Councillor Dowler, seconded Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. The confidential minutes from the Tasman District Council meeting 13th of December 2023. Moved Councillor Kinnemont, seconded Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour, please say aye. The extraordinary council meeting confidential minutes 24th of January 2024. Moved Councillor Downer, seconded Councillor Maru. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Extraordinary Tasman Council meeting, the confidential minutes, the 1st of February 2024. Moved Councillor Dowler, seconded Councillor Kinnemont. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Right, we'll now move into the rest of the agenda. So first up, we have the retrospective approval of submissions. Diana, welcome. So item 7.2.
Morena koutou. So this is a formality in terms of retrospective approval of submissions. The report has 5 report authors. Each of these staff members were responsible for one of the 5 submissions that are attached to this agenda report. In terms of process, we had a lead author that sought input from staff for the submission. As part of that process, councillors were also given the opportunity to review the submission and provide input. And then individually, these were signed off by delegated authority through either the Mayor and or Chief Executive. I would like to flag that each of these submissions, the consultations were obviously led by the previous Labour government. And so while Tasman has provided its view, we obviously don't know going forward under the new government where things may land. That's all I had to say. Thank you, and happy to take the report as read.
Thanks, Diana. Any questions, comments, or if someone's prepared to move and or second? Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I'm happy to move it. I mean, honestly, I found it hard to get enthusiastic about reading through this in very much detail because, you know, always there in my mind is, well, actually, are any of these going to be progressed under the new government? What's the status? What's the timing? And then I just kind of went thinking about the amount of resource that we've actually put into progressing this, and I feel for the staff in actual fact, because you know, you go into this and you engage, and then you're left in a bit of a hole. So happy to move, Mr. Mayor, but a bit despondently.
Okay, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Maru, and yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I guess I share Councillor Mackenzie's sentiments in terms of I probably missed half of these when they came through, but certainly have been asked the question of what stage did we go out further and reach and actually gauge public interest in terms of the submissions. And so again, I'm not too sure of that, but with Councillor Mackenzie, I'm happy to second in terms of these have been done. But I guess we all have a responsibility to absolutely understand these when they come up with a short time frame and seek that wider community engagement.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing, this is a council submission, so it's not purporting to be submitting on behalf of, so to speak, and our government run processes via either select committees or other processes, so everyone has the ability to input their own submissions, and as you correctly pointed out, Councillor Mara, it's our responsibility to bring the views as we see them of the community to these sort of submissions. Councillor Greening.
Yes, I just think it's important, given the public are also probably looking at this and trying to understand why it's a formality given it's retrospective. So just to clarify, these reports were circulated earlier to councillors, and that is this the comments of council political, or is this the submissions of TDC staff technical?
Yeah, it's the council submission, so it includes both of those, So it is that council submission, and it includes feedback, comments, views from council staff, comments, feedback, views from councillors, and it is like everything that ultimately is signed off by us collectively, that council's view.
And it was circulated to councillors before submitted?
they were all circulated and people had the opportunity for feedback or input, yes.
Yeah, and how much time was provided for feedback?
Diana, it'll vary on the different submissions, given the timeframes that we were working to from the central government agencies that were asking for the feedback. So it will have varied.
Yeah, it did. I suppose what I'm trying to emphasize is that technically all good, and they are very technical reports. I don't particularly have too much of an issue with points raised. I think there were some good points raised. Don't necessarily agree with all of them, but there were some good points raised. My point is that it would be useful, given that we're doing these as this is a formality, which technically I suppose you could say it is, but it's important that councillors do have the opportunity to have sufficient time to digest these if we are then going to treat these as a formality. That's my observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge the work of staff in putting these submissions together. Often they, just in reflection to what Councillor Greening has said, sometimes they didn't actually have a lot of time. The feedback times were short and they had to gather a lot of information together in a short space of time, which really pushed it for councillors being able to have input. But I'd just like to say that these submissions stand in their own right and they are very useful, quite apart from legislation being removed again. These are very useful documents in their own right, and I'd just like to thank the staff. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Unless there's anything further, and I think has been touched on by the mover, this is a rapidly moving kind of space, the whole RM reform and the repealing of the natural built environment spatial planning legislation, the reversion to a slightly amended version of the RMA, and then the number of changes that the current government most front of mind is the fast track consenting process, which is kind of in preparation currently. And not only is there a lot of things changing, they're changing extremely quickly. And unlike the previous processes where there was a lot of input, consultation, expectations of feedback and large submissions, I suspect the new process is going to be a lot more simpler, for better or worse. Right, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Thank you, Diana. Next up, we have the referral report in the name of Rob Cant in relation to Golden Bay Kayaks, referral report from Golden Bay Community Board. Welcome, Rob. Noting Councillor Mackenzie's previous declaration. Rob.
Thank you. I've been with the council 12 years now. And probably about 9 or 10 years ago, the Golden Bay Kayaks issue came onto my radar. It's a very unusual scenario in that we've got a commercial operation running from a council park. We went through a process about 9 years ago, which involved public notification, drew something in the order of 50 submissions, some in favour, some against. In the end, we granted a lease for a total term of 9 years. So it was 3 years plus 3 years plus 3 years. As we come towards the end of that 9 years, Golden Bay Kayaks have asked for a 20-year term. My instinct is that it's kind of time that we decided whether or not this operation should continue in its present location. So I'm recommending that we go to a public notification. I took it to the community board late last year. They were happy for it to go to public notification, and as you'll see, they've requested to be appointed as the hearing panel. That's kind of not my expertise, so I don't know whether that's normal or a good or a bad idea. The reality is that the benefits of this business operating from where they are is predominantly to the local bay community, as are the detriments, which are things like parking, less space available in the park, more people in the park. So I'm recommending we go to public consultation, and I'm a bit neutral on the appointment of the community board, but I can certainly understand the advantages of having a local issue determined by a local board.
Okay, thanks very much, Rob. So again, reports there, open for any questions or queries, moving or seconding. Councillor Greening.
Thanks. Just a quick question. You mentioned before it was a 9-year lease, which I assume was a 3+3+3. So is that a lease with two rights of renewal? And if it is, what's the justification for extending it to 3 rights of renewal? And are 3 rights of renewal normal for council leases?
Yes, it was a 9-year term, so it was 1 3-year lease with 2 rights of renewal for a further 3 years. No, it's not usual to have rights of renewal in this scenario, but I guess the point with this proposal is that it is a bit unusual. They've asked for 20 years. My recommendation is we do that by way of 5 years initially, plus 3 further rights of renewal for a total of 20, which is what the applicants have requested.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Walker and then Councillor Murray.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I got a couple of questions. First one is, do we have any other commercial operators operating in a similar fashion of a TDC reserve in our district? Question 1. Question 2, when you say you sit either way with regards to the community board doing the hearing, is this something that they have been delegated? Like as a community board, is that part of their delegations? Are we adding to? I'm not saying that I disagree with it, because I think community boards should have some teeth and some skin in the game and not be a tick box exercise group. But are we setting a precedent?
Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to? Or
So to answer your first question, no, there's no other similar scenarios to this where we've got a commercial operation operating from a park. That's part of why I think it's advisable to go out to the community to say, are you happy for this to continue? It's been there for probably about 12 or 13 years as a business, with not too many big issues. Sorry. So Richard's pointed out that I think it is mentioned, there's a difference between a park, which is administered under the Local Government Act, and a reserve, which is administered under the Reserves Act. I don't believe this could operate from a reserve, but because this land isn't held under the Reserves Act, it's a park under the Local Government Act. And I wish I could tell you the logic of that, but that's just what the law says. In terms of your question about the Golden Bay Community Board, this report's asking you to delegate to them the role of the hearing panel. So I'm not aware.
So it's akin to what we've done previously with dog control bylaws, for example, with some or less success, as the case may be, depending on where and when. So yes, I don't think it's precedent setting in the sense of us delegating more responsibilities. And personally, I think it's what could suggestion. Okay, thank you, Councillor Murray.
You think, Mr. Mayor, I was just looking at the screen and see if Councillor Butler had raised her hand. I'm happy to move because I actually think the decision to make a decision like this sits in the community with the community board. And I think there's absolutely the capability to do that. So I'm happy to move. In doing so, I just have one question, Rob, and that is the 20-year lease term. Is that a term that we're going to replicate across community leases as well? It's the term I quite like it because there's certainty and I know we've had conversations about terms of community leasing. Does this sort of set the indication that we'd start considering 5+5 and a 20-year term for some of our stable community leases?
Fundamentally, it's what they are for. The proposal didn't come from myself or anybody else. You know, to be honest, when it came in, which was probably about 12 months ago, we hadn't even got to the point of thinking about what their part of the discussions we've had with them is that the particular building is getting a bit dilapidated. If they've only got relatively short-term occupation, they are reluctant to put capital into repairing that building. So they've asked for a bit more certainty. My take on it is there needs to be a decision about whether this is something that can be ongoing, because it is so unusual. You know, it's been there for at least a decade. So I think now's the right time to say, can it stay or should it not?
Right. Okay. And because they're happy to move, let the community have their say either or, and let the hearing process take place.
Thank you, Councillor Butler.
Thanks. Yeah, I won't second it because I'm a member of the community board, Golden Bay Community Board, but I would just point out that the building is actually the old Sea Scouts building at Tata Beach where they used to operate from. So it's quite a historical building, and it is it has got it's giving it a good use. I think that the Golden Bay Community Board requested this because they feel that there's some really local knowledge that's required to do this assessment. I just think it's quite an unusual situation, but also as a business that means a lot to the district.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Dowler, and then I'll come to Mike for a comment.
Yeah, happy to see Mr. Mayor after listening to the whole conversation.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just thought I'd bring to Councillor's attention, because this is a commercial operation, the length of the lease impacts on the value of the business. So for the same reason, our holiday parks lessees want long leases for the holiday parks. This company will want a long lease so it can invest in the buildings, but also it directly reflects the value of their business, having that certainty moving forward.
Thanks, Mike. Good point to make. Yes.
I just want to confirm that in the delegations register, the community boards have the power to recommend to council the granting of leases or licenses on reserves and public spaces in their community.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Right, is there anything further? It's been moved and seconded. And while I think Rob's point is this is unusual for us, but this is common for DOC. Reserves and parks are used for commercial operations, the most obvious being Kaiteri, where there are multi-million-dollar operations operating off reserves and through concessions and the equivalent of leases. So, and then all through Able Tasman National Park, same thing applies. So it is unusual for us, but it isn't entirely unusual in the sense of the way particularly tourism businesses operate around New Zealand. So I think it is entirely appropriate that the Golden Bay Community Board is the right place to hear and ultimately, are they making a recommendation back to us or making the decision? Recommendation back. So I think that is the appropriate way to go. Before I put the resolution, Councillor Shand.
Through the chair. Hey, my one's just on risk, moving forward with obviously sea level rise and things like that. Is there any risk to council with the business if they do get a lease in that space.
I don't see that there's a particular risk. It's a really good point you make, and I'll be honest and say it's not one that I've contemplated, but I think what we would do is within the terms of the lease, we would say that the lease doesn't guarantee that the land will remain suitable for the use and that it will be subject to a risk of sea level rise. A really good point you make, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Next up, we've got temporary road closures, and Jamie, welcome. I'll give Jamie the opportunity to add anything he'd like to before I come to you, Deputy Mayor Bryant. But Jamie, over to you.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. You're happy to take the report as read and answer any questions.
Thanks, Jamie. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jamie, for the report. It's a reasonably standard procedure, and all of these events have happened prior, so I think there's no issue with that really. So I'm happy to move the resolution to allow that to happen.
Thank you. Move Deputy Mayor Bryant. Is there a seconder? Councillor Walker? Seconded. Any further questions or comments? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thanks, Jamie. Are you going to stay there, Jamie? Well, because that was so easy. Next up is item 7.5, so amendment to Council's Traffic Control Devices Register and Traffic Control Bylaw. Mike, over to you.
Also, yeah, happy to have the report as read. It's probably fairly familiar with the diagrammatic descriptions of new traffic control devices to be considered. And this report also has a table of existing traffic control devices we've identified out of a RAM database. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Open for questions, comment, or moving and seconding. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the report, Mike. I just have one question. Firstly, just in relation to the time that it takes for these to come in effect, we obviously tell the contractor to paint them reasonably quickly, do we? And should be within effect within a few weeks or months.
Correct. We'll pass them on to the contractor of the program. And there's different ranges of urgency in that for sure.
Appreciate that. With that, I'm once again fairly standard sort of stuff. I'm happy to move, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ellis. Any further comments? Councillor Dowler.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the transport choices stuff in Motueka. Yesterday, we had a proposed meeting with the project manager over there. We couldn't do it because some of the councillors weren't available. So there was a bit of an email conversation, and during one of the emails, he indicated that the Queen Victoria Street path may not go ahead due to unaffordability. No money left to finish it. So it's quite an in-depth thing that's shown in here. So we just approve that, and even if it doesn't happen.
Correct. Yeah. So at the time of writing this report, the information from the project manager was that they were hoping the budgets would stretch to this project. I presume you've had an update there, and it's looking less likely. But it's as per there's a raft of other traffic control devices that have already been approved for the transport choices, which we know won't be going ahead under the funding. So there will be a wrap up potentially the next meeting where we might remove some of these traffic control devices that haven't been able to be implemented.
Yeah, rightio. And just some of the stuff there that we have been party to as the three councillors. And then when you look at the pictures that have been here in front of us, some of the dimensions are missing out of some of them. So yeah, what we see and what we get on the plans are completely different. I noticed one yesterday, which will be discussed offline later today with the manager, hopefully. And yeah, so it's just, concerns me a bit that what we could be approving. I just look at the transport choices at TFN Marae shared path. There's no actual road dimension shown on any of those pictures for the final roading width. It's quite a crucial road, that one. I hope it doesn't become a pinch point, which the picture tells me that it could be. But yeah, just some concerns that are popping up now that we haven't had discussions during our fortnightly meetings. So yeah.
Could I, through the media?
Yep, Jamie.
So I guess what this report is requesting approval for is for a shared path. So it's a specific traffic control device. And the intent of the diagrammatic representation here is it's not a review of the detailed designs of the project. It's enabling a shared path that gets constructed there to be to have things enforced as per a shared path, or so cyclists know that they are allowed to cycle on that. So this isn't trying to replace any project specific decision making. So just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Cheers, thank you, Councillor Dowler. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, through Mayor. So a bit of feedback from our community around the Memorial Hall car parking. That's great. It's going from 120 to 180. There is some concern, however, around how many of the local supermarket staffing are parking at the rear of Memorial Hall, which means that the 50 plus people who utilise their facilities struggle to get parking. And I've asked for this request previously with regards to when there's an event held at Memorial Hall, and last year we had at least 4 school productions held there. If you're going to have controlled parking, the tech team really struggle to run an event where they're there up to 14 hours to come in and out and move their car so they don't continue to get traffic fines. Is there a way that we could please give at least one pass for the team that go in and work in the Memorial Hall, seeing that we've put the limits on the parking?
Wanted to catch up offline about that one. Yeah, I mean, there's a range of possible solutions to that. Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky situation around most of our kind of town centre parking areas where there's demand for longer term parking than the typical time limits provide. So there are some workarounds, but there's probably need to have a conversation about those options.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Next up, proposal to stop unformed legal roads. Robert, welcome back. Page 144, item 7.6.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is kind of a relatively straightforward concept, I think. What's unusual is I can't think of any others in the last 5 years, and we've had these two plus another in the last 3 months or so. So it's the old adage about, a bus not coming along and then 3 come at once. What we have been doing since this report was authored is starting to interact with iwi about this concept in these 2 specific scenarios. We're still waiting for feedback, but the initial feedback has been mixed, shall we say. So I'll signal that it's possible that these won't go to public notification. If iwi indicate that if this will go to public notification, they will object, then we would go back to the landowning applicants and saying, look, we recommend you save your money, because if anybody objects to a road stopping, then it becomes very, very time consuming and therefore expensive. So I just wanted to signal that I think everything else stands as it is. There's no obvious transportation risks with either of these two, but sometimes the philosophical concept is problematic.
Okay, thank you. So for those who might want to help resolve a philosophical conversation about road stopping, feel free to put your hand up to be part of the hearing panel and fill the 3 highlighted spots. Don't overrun me with enthusiasm. Councillor Dowler, splendid. One victim, volunteer. Councillor Kinnemont and Councillor Dakey. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Who wants to chair? You can. Councillor Dowler, you're in. Okay, any further feedback? If not, I will put the resolution with those names included. All those in favour, please say aye. I'll move Councillor Dowler. Seconded Councillor Shellcrest. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. And while we're here, we'll try and get this one done before we break. Rob, also in your name, in relation to community leases, Golden Bay.
I didn't even turn my mic off. Thank you. Again, this is probably as straightforward as the other two were. That this is probably the most straightforward. All of these community groups have been operating in Golden Bay for a long time. Just more for information, but there's no provision in the Reserves Act to, unless a lease has a right of renewal, to indicate to, at the expiry of each lease, you kind of have to start again in terms of considering whether or not to grant another one. And that might come to Councillor Maru's point about the 5 years. And that's a good conversation to have within the community leasing policy, because it's probably not the time for me to tell you why I think 5 years is a good idea. But I'm definitely open to other considerations about that. So these should all be relatively straightforward. We have a number that are going to be flowing through probably in the next 6 months, some of which will be less straightforward because they will require public notice and potential hearings. But these ones are straightforward. They've been to the community board.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the added informational explanation. Is there someone willing to move? Councillor Butler.
Yes, I'm willing to move things, and these organisations will be very pleased to have this sorted out.
So move Councillor Butler, seconded Councillor Maru. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. While we're on a roll, we still have time. Next up is the change of membership or on the Animal Control Subcommittee. So again, relatively straightforward. Councillor Kinnemont has indicated a willingness to undertake the role, onerous though it may be from time to time. So I'm just looking for a mover and seconder. Move Councillor Dowler, seconded Councillor Maru. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So at this point, I think it's a good place to break. So we'll break now. We'll come back to do the financial quarterly quarterly report, financial report, half year after a break. So back underway. So next up, we have Treasury quarterly report. So Mike is speaking to this. Is Matt coming down for the subsequent conversation, Mike, or are you doing both?
He should be down for this subsequent conversation, but if he is not available, I will deal with it.
Yeah, all good. No worries. Righto, so 7.9 Treasury quarterly report, page 163. Mike, over to you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is a regular quarterly report. Just a reminder that this report is as at the end of January. The financial report is at the end of December. So if you're wondering why some of the numbers don't agree between the two reports, there's a month's difference. A couple of things I'll bring to your attention. As you've seen in the first paragraph of the report, our gross debt's 327 million. When we take off our deposits and when we take off our pass-through borrowing, which goes through Waimea Water Limited, the shareholder advances, we have net debt of 229 million. So we have a net debt limit of 250 million. That's a self-imposed cap for council. As I've noted in the main financial report, if we breach that cap, we need to report it in our annual report and the reasons why. The reasons I'm bringing it to your attention is we typically haven't run this close to the cap at this point in time in the financial year. So working our way through. So that means we will need to watch the capital works program in terms of the borrowing to support capital works. We will need to watch our operational expenditure as well, making sure we do all the things a normal business does to improve and maintain its cash flow. So you can expect us to be sending our invoices out on time, chasing up the people who owe us money, making sure we don't pay people early if we don't have to. And so just all the things that businesses do just to hold that net debt number down. You have got your consultation on the long-term plan coming up, and in that there are proposals to increase that net debt cap that will address the issues of the capital works and other operational matters in the long-term plan period. So that's what I wanted to bring to your attention. The other thing is you'll notice that our average cost of borrowing is higher than budgeted. That will have an impact on council's results for the year. We will flow that higher cost through to each of the individual activities from the Treasury cost centre. So you'll note when you look at activities a little bit later on that their cost of borrowing for the last 6 months of the year will be higher than the cost of borrowing for the first 6 months of the year. Having said that, we are looking to see what happens with the overnight cash rate or the official cash rate. There are a number of positions that the market commentators are taking. We are likely to see, I think, an upward movement in that, a small one, but also we're likely to see interest rates being higher for longer. That will impact on us over the next 1 to 2 years. We've also seen an increase in the long-term interest rates. These are more affected by what happens in the US economy and what the Fed does in the US. They have also lifted in recent times as well. So in short, we're facing a situation where over time, our cost of borrowing will go up. And as our debt goes up, our cost of borrowing, servicing that debt will take a larger portion of council incomes. And that is one of the pressures you will have on your rates rises and moderating fees and charges. Having said that, I'm quite happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Mike. So it is open for questions. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, just in terms of para 1.6, when we talk about the additional financing costs, which you've just mentioned, and passing those on to the activities, can you confirm for me that the budget holders of those activities understand what are going to be the additional costs that are that they need to meet and that they have the budgets to accommodate it?
So first point, these will be calculated as part of the reforecast, which we've mentioned in the main financial report. In many cases, they won't have the budget to accommodate these additional finance costs, likely to lead to a lower surplus or a deficit within the activity. We won't be able to quantify that until we have finished the reforecast and we have the numbers for the end of the year.
Councillor Mackenzie.
So yeah, it might be good to have another discussion about that then when we have the reforecast, because you know there are always choices to be made. So for example, we might want to indicate that we want reprioritisation to occur so that actually they can sit within their original budget. So I think that when we get the reforecast, that we need to be up for having that discussion.
That reforecast is coming to the March council meeting. Will allow you to see where we are likely to be at year end. And that will give you that opportunity. We'll be bringing some proposals obviously at that time to you. And we'll also be indicating which areas have are likely to have additional expenditure that's unbudgeted or expenditure over budget. And we'll be asking you to approve or otherwise of that expenditure. Managers are only too aware that they need to manage their budgets to the bottom line. It's just that some of them will find that extremely difficult because of the small number of discretionary items that they could pull back on between now and the end of the year.
I'm happy to move.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved. I've got Councillor Murray, then Councillor Greening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Mike, just picking up on your comment that we will be doing everything that business does to maintain or to do everything we can to stay underneath the debt. Does that also mean revisiting staff replacements and appointments? And so when you say in a business sense, is it in a true business sense or is it in a version of council's business sense? I guess I'm exploring more.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I was talking about it in terms of liquidity and cash management. So in terms of what businesses do to, shall we say, get the cash in the door, how they manage paying their suppliers. Obviously, we will also be looking at the budgets moving forward, and the chief executive and the other managers will be looking at where we can save money between now and the end of the year.
And that sort of comes to Councillor Mackenzie's statement is what levers do managers that control budgets actually have, and they seem pretty minimal. One of those levers will be staffing costs and operational costs. That'll be one of the few, apart from Mr. Kirby's capital expenditure, that there's any variance, and everything else in terms of the financing costs especially are outside their control. So, you know, you've flagged, I think, 249 as a potential. Are you flagging more of an indication that it's likely to breach the 250 million, or is there a whole lot of other work behind the background being done to ensure that we don't?
Through Mr. Mayor, I can assure you there is work going on in the background to manage our position. Neither the staff nor the CE want to see a breach of the 250 million. That we take that point at the end of the month. So during a month, we might get a breach for a couple of weeks, but we're back in line by the end of the month. So as I indicated in the financial report, we'll be working hard to maintain our position below the net debt limit. It's not a simple case of it's okay, we'll breach.
Thank you, Mike. Seconded, Councillor Murray, so it has been moved and seconded. Councillor Greening and then Councillor Kinnan-Month.
Yeah, so read the report with a lot of interest. No surprises really where the trajectory is going. Speaking of trajectory and noting that you are looking to reforecast, will you be reforecasting your growth expectations given what appears to be a decline and probably flatlining of the consents process, and given that's quite a large revenue stream for council in terms of charges, and given also the LTP is premised on growth, and if that growth doesn't occur, there could be quite a big hole in the LTP.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would expect the activity managers to be taking into account expected volume of work flowing through, particularly in that building consent, resource consent area that will be built into the forecast. It's also likely to influence, as it already has, the forecast assumptions that are used for the draft LTP numbers.
Fantastic. I mean, I do think that our growth expectations are slightly above where I think the market is heading. We'll probably get maybe another retirement village, but I don't think we'll get much more than that. I was just looking at median prices across New Zealand, and right now Tasman holds the second highest median house price in New Zealand. So I don't think we'll be seeing many more people coming from Tauranga or Christchurch.
Thank you. Councillor Kinnamuth.
Thank you. It must be through you, Mr. Mayor. This report goes to the 31st of December. Is that correct? And on the 15th of February, we've been told that in about March, we're going to be told about where the extra $28 million is going to be drawn down so we don't breach our debt cap. Is that, you're frowning me, is that about right?
Through Mr. Mayor, I apologise for the frown. I was attempting to concentrate on the question. This report is at the 31st of January. The main financial report is at 31st of December. We're indicating that we're managing the position moving forward in order to maintain a position under the cap. And I have indicated what happens should we breach the cap.
Right.
So
okay.
we've got sorry.
So the first priority is to not breach the cap. The second priority is that if we do breach the cap, there will be a report or some sort of something coming to us as to how and why it was breached and the cause and the effect of it.
Mike. That is correct. It would be incorporated in the next financial report to council. It's also a requirement that it is publicly reported in our annual report as well.
So to clarify, so in March, there will be a reforecast and options provided both by staff suggesting that we could do X, Y, Z. Other suggestions that councillors may have to stick within the debt cap. So that is the next opportunity council has to influence what takes place, what happens outside the day-to-day operational things that council managers will be considering anyway. Should that not manage to resolve the issue, and at the end of the year we have breached the $250 billion debt cap, the reporting of that will obviously form part of the annual report. But the opportunity to influence it is in March, correct? Yeah. Okay, anything further? It's been moved and seconded. No, it was seconded by Councillor Murray. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And now we move on to the half-yearly financial report. Matt. You want to do it?
Matt will leave this one.
Thanks, Mike, to you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, in front of you is a half-yearly report. It's the second of 3 quarterly reports that you received during the year, with the annual report rounding it out, obviously. I actually celebrated 10 years at council yesterday, and this is the first time that I've actually seen us having an adverse variance across those 10 years. So it really is an illustration of the change in the financial circumstances, the world that we're living in, to actually see that we're have an unfavourable variance. So it does make all of this, as I'm sure you're aware, so much more difficult in terms of the long-term plan, etc. One other thing I'd note before opening it up is just around the capital expenditure. I am privy to the January numbers that are not shown in this report, but we're up around $40 million of spend without including the joint ventures that we have. Last year we actually spent $49 million across the whole 12 months, so we're certainly a long way ahead. Historically, the last 5 months are also the biggest months, especially the last 3. So yeah, we could be looking upwards of a $75–80 million capital spend, just to, if you use a crude run rate that finance is prone to doing. So without saying any more, we're open for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And certainly in the current circumstances, getting those capital projects completed and spending the budgeted amount is something that will be positive, despite the fact that also, in an ironic sort of way, pushes us closer to the debt cap. But given that's what we budgeted to do, and our big challenge historically has been to actually complete the capital expenditure program, and not the best year to achieve it, we might actually get as close to achieving it as we have in the past. So both good news and potentially a challenge that comes with it. Open for questions, comments or feedback. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Mayor. Always good to get this information. I know there's been some email exchanges around building consent, so I won't go into that. You know, but this is the history, and what's important is actually the forecast and how that's going to play out. Notwithstanding that, I mean, I am just interested in the variance in the general rates and the targeted rates. So for the 6 months, you know, that's, you know, over $500,000, 600,000 upwards for the 6 months. Why is there such a variance? Because I would have thought we could be more on the button with that, but
through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly with targeted rates and general rates, it's around to it's down to the growth percentage that sometimes we use. In terms of what we estimate is generally conservative. We obviously get some numbers out of the growth model, but we tend to err on the side of caution. So what you're seeing here is more rateable properties at the 1st of July than we were actually expecting. Couple that with it potentially could be to do with some volumetric charges around water as well. But to be honest, I would need to look at that in terms of the targeted rates. I'm not sure if that's actually true or not, but it could well be that as well.
okay, so we might get a bit more understanding of it then in March. I guess it could actually be, you know, a good news story, because actually if we flow this through into our assumptions with regards to the LTP, then that could actually be a helpful situation.
That is correct. We reset, shall we say, our assumptions, the number of properties, the values. Each time we do each time we do an annual plan or an LTP, so we've already adjusted that annual. The LTP expectations in light of the information we now have on the number of properties that are being rated within the district.
Oh, bother. So there's not another uplift.
I think the key point in that conversation was the point Matt made earlier, that we are generally conservative in our assumptions around growth. And coming back to Councillor Greening's earlier point, as we go into the LTP, like constantly monitoring where that sits, what the forecasting is, how realistic is it, because this can move favourably, and just as it can move unfavourably if we overcook the growth assumptions around rates, revenue. So it's important to always keep looking at it. Okay. Anything further? If not, I will put the result that's been moved. Councillor Mackenzie, I think, seconded. So move Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Deputy Mayor Bryant. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Next up, machinery resolutions. Page 181, item 711. Someone like to move? Move Councillor Mackenzie. Seconded Councillor Kinnamunt. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And Leonie, over to you for the Chief Executive's update.
Machinery specifically.
No, I've done the machinery.
Oh, you did that? Sorry about that.
Welcome to your first report as the CEO.
I don't actually have acting on here because I'm actually officially not
technically
until
you are.
Monday. Yes, I'll take the report as read. I did note in here, obviously, thank you to Janine Dowding. Big shoes to fill, as I've said. And I really look forward to doing my very best for the councillors in the community. And thank you for putting your trust and faith in me. And certainly am very excited about this opportunity. I'll take the report as read, as I said, and any questions, happy to answer.
Okay, it's open for questions. Councillor Murray.
Thank you. And welcome. I've got a couple, if that's okay. So one is regarding 4.16. So I'm very interested in receiving a copy of that information around the Motueka Aerodrome, and you will see me CC'd on some of those employment questions, I think, in terms of that. So firstly that, and then talking on the Lagoima request, I guess as a new councillor, I do struggle to find some of the information. Are these requests purely just because people are digging for something individually, or is it just because we can't navigate our nice, clumsy system at the moment to find it easier? So I was asked a question this week about a meeting that happened in such and such date, and I don't even know where I'll start to try and find the paper that. But so I'm just wondering, as we publish things on our website, is there a hyperlink that we can add that just go, here's the source document of information? Because there's definitely a desire to have more than just the media released information and that in there. And I'm just wondering if it'll help with the Goyma request, because I know having been seasoned, they do take a wee while to come. And I think my comment's been always is sometimes the answer mightn't be the most favourable answer, but the answer is the answer. So I hope the thing we take time to litigate an answer before just providing the answer.
So I answer that one? That one first, or do you want to answer the next one as well?
And the second one is, I know it's absolutely operational, but I see the COO's position is currently advertised. And I was wondering if the new CE had any plans of looking at that structure before they replace that. But you've obviously turned your mind to it, but I was surprised to see it so quickly without the CE embedding to see if this current structure is what they wanted to work with.
Oh, I'll answer the first question. A request, a Goyma request, if we can answer it straight away, then it's not a Goyma request. The Goyma request is something where we have to take a bit of time to pull the information together. Some of it may be we don't put everything out into the public domain, mainly because of the amount of information that we have. So asking where a meeting is or etc., we answer that straight away. Officially, they're all a Goyma request, but we don't put them through what we call here a formal Goyma request process. So the ones on here are the ones that have gone to our Goyma team and then have to go out to the organisation and gain the information. So I hope that answers that one. And yes, we do want to put more. And if someone is asking a question, we think actually we should be making that more accessible, we will try and put that on our website. But we could do better, and we do know that. For the second question, yes, I have gone to market. I had the privilege of already being in the role, so as the co, and obviously the previous CEO. When we look at Chief Operating Officer role, it's actually corporate services. So typically you would call it corporate services, and that has all the stuff that helps run the organisation: human resources, audit and risk, legal, governance, etc. And it's a necessary role. And talking about restructures, look. I don't think that we need a restructure. I think that it doesn't necessarily break down silos. In fact, sometimes they create it. And I think we had one in 2021, and I don't think the organisation needs that level of change. We work with what we've got. So yes, I had put a lot of thought to it. It wasn't just a quick knee-jerk, believe me. It was well thought through. And I do have some ideas, a few tweaking, but it is very operational, and that will come out further down the track. I hope that helps.
And that last statement, I respect this operational.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Kinnemont, then Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Through the mayor to you, Leonie. The previous CEO had big shoes, but so have you. So you'll do well. The Maori ward and the Maori representation on 3 other operational committees. Is there any timelines of when we would like to see faces around tables and that sort of thing? I see we've got names put forward, but is it 6 months away, a year away? Just a rough timeline when you'd see it happening.
Through the chair, we do have some thoughts around that. In terms of timeframes, I believe that's going to be happening sooner than later. But I think there's something coming up later that we are going to talk about in terms of Maori representation. Yep.
In terms of the Maori wards, there is now that question mark over the government's policy in terms of referenda, and my understanding is that we will fall absolutely into the category of having to have a referendum in relation to the decision around Maori wards, as well. Councillors like Nelson, who actually already have it in place and have been through one election cycle, but because it was put in place under the previous legislation without a referenda, they may also have to go through a referendum. We're in a slightly different position. They've completed their representation review 2 years ago. We are about to complete ours now. So it remains uncertain as to how that's all going to play out.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I guess for me, when I look at your report, Leonie, and I thank you for your report, the trends and I'm interested in the trends with the Laguima and the fact that we went from 295 up to 509, and this year's not tracking any lower, if in fact it's not tracking higher. Are there some trends that we as a council need to be acknowledging and addressing? And why have we suddenly got these big steep incline of, increasing demands from our community on requests? But what's the underlying factors for some of these things? Are there some, and are there something that we need to be looking at to address?
Are we going to have we either had or were we going to have like a? Okay, all good. Leonie.
To the chair. So I would say the trend of the general Laguimas are pretty much the same as every other year. But at the moment, I think we've got 40 something open at the moment. Most are around 1 or 2 people, 1 or 2 requesters. So those aren't what I would call typical. In terms of what's behind those, I couldn't possibly talk in the open forum around that because I don't want to put out there what they are around. Typically just around some of our processes and procedures, how we do business here at council. That's probably a very general overview of the type of request. We do have one around a commercial operation. We've had lots of requests around that, and they're all very legitimate requests. Yeah.
I think it'd be really useful to have this broken down as by number of people, not just number of requests, because 509 people with 1 request is completely different from 1 person with 509 requests, or 20 people with somewhere in between. So I think it would be really useful information to help people understand the range of requests and the number of people making them.
And
because it's not
ideally as well.
It's not as simple as 509 and the trend is X, because it can be really skewed by a dozen people or one issue that attracts a whole lot of Laguima requests. So so as Councillor Greening I think mentioned there, so whether it's issues at a very general sense and not as specifics, and the number of people that corresponds to the number of total requests would be useful additional information. Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor McKenzie and then Deputy Mayor Bryan.
Thank you. I actually had a question arising from a comment that you made, Mr. Mayor. So the referendum, do you know, would that be a binding referendum or not?
Yes, I assume it would be, as it was previously.
Okay.
Yeah. So previously, you could request a referendum on a Maori ward, I think, on the decision around a Maori ward, and then the outcome is the outcome, so it is binding. Then the Labor government removed that, so you couldn't have one, i.e. there was none, which is the case for all other decisions around ward boundaries, makeup, representation. The current government has indicated that they're going to change back to the need to have so whether it's a need to have one, I think it is, as opposed to a request-based thing, i.e. if a number of X number of ratepayers request a poll, I think it is that there will need to be a poll if you wish to establish a Maori ward, or if you have already established one without a poll, you will also have to have a poll. Where that all is yet to be finally kind of determined.
I won't hold you to it.
Deputy Mayor Bryan.
Yeah, mine was on a similar vein, just to follow on from Councillor Campbell. So just in relation to ads trying to establish a ward, and Leonie, thank you for your report you've got in there. The name will form part of the council's initial proposal, and then in relation to the representation review, after that and council making the final decision. Is that relating to the name you're suggesting there, or the Maori ward, or? That's what I'm a little unclear on.
So I'm talking around the actual name that was endorsed, if there was to be a Maori ward. Remember, we agreed to have a Maori ward, and obviously things have changed a bit. So we had that process in play before the new government. So that's the proposed name if we were to have a Maori ward.
Right, thank you.
So the initial proposal, unless the legislation changes between now and when we put it out for consultation, will include a Maori ward because we've already decided.
Correct.
The name of it will be as stated here. However, it is more than likely that if the government goes through the process as indicated, that there will need to be a referendum / poll on the establishment.
They'll have to do that reasonably quickly because there is timelines that has to be followed for this whole process.
Correct.
Probably supersede what they want to do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, it doesn't matter the time frame because they've indicated it will be retrospective. So even if you have established a Maori ward, as Nelson have, and been through one election cycle, you will still have to have a poll.
That seems really counterproductive, doesn't it?
Councillor Greening.
First of all, can I just support Councillor Murray's observations on the staffing issues and the financial pressure that we're under. It's interesting to see now a number of councils now looking at their staffing levels to bring themselves back into a affordable rates increase. My question is a bit of a technical one, and I may not get an immediate answer, but just following on from the Maori ward issue in a referendum, how does this sit with the appointed advisors that we are putting to the committees, which are not voted for, but which have voting rights around the table? So my question, I suppose, is if a referendum doesn't support a Maori ward, i.e. Maori representation, how does that affect council's ability to appoint, effectively bypassing the referendum by continuing to appoint advisors who have voting rights?
So it doesn't impact on that decision. So should the government require a poll around the representation review, which is an elected position, then that is what we will have to follow. The appointment of people to standing committees with voting rights is a decision that council makes, and whether it's advisors like our commercial subcommittee, where independent members bring a particular skill set around, in that case, finance, business, etc., or whether it's related to iwi appointments that bring a different perspective, that decision isn't affected by the current government's proposal. Obviously, the council has a decision to make around how it wishes to proceed or not with those appointments, but that is the council's decision, not impacted by the current government's suggested legislation.
So there's no implicit removal of that. I'm just wondering, have we got legal advice supporting that?
There is not either implicit or specific implications for council's own appointment to its own committees based on their desire for whatever skill sets are available.
So is there legal opinion on this from the government or agency introducing these referendums? Because it does seem that you are bypassing a referendum by doing it. I just wonder whether, I know the government's position is
so look, the government
antagonistic towards Maori appointments. I'm just wondering whether they consider this to be councils trying to walk around their referendum to get rid of Maori wards.
The government may have that position, and they may address that through their legislation. My understanding at the moment, I'm happy if anyone in the room wants to offer a legal opinion, but we have not sought a legal opinion. It's a developing space, so we're not even sure currently what the government's legislation will look like. Look,
I just wonder whether this is an issue that we could raise with LGNZ, just because that's the agency who should be doing it for us, really, given it's going to affect every other.
I'm happy to get further advice. I don't think it's worth trying to hash it out here because.
Oh no, I don't want to incur more costs and legal costs. I think we should leverage off our LGNZ colleagues when we fund them.
Yeah, I'm not sure
I just wanted to make a comment that we've got a workshop on the 22nd of, which is next week, on this issue. So I think there'll be ample time to have these questions, and we are bringing in some advice that you can answer these questions to. But I think that you're talking about two separate processes here.
Yeah, but I think one might implicitly affect the other. That's all. But yeah, I'm open to seeing if that happens.
Yeah. Ultimately, one is a legislative process that the government will tell us what to do and how to go about it. One is a council decision-making process, and the two may have an interaction, or but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, as long as it's not seen as we're walking through a loophole, that's what I'm concerned.
No, I know. Heaven forbid we try and get around something the government tells us to do. That would be terrible. Right. Anything further? Sorry, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Tim. Sort of as part of this whole discussion, given that we are working through the representation review process and that's under legislation that we have to do it, how much leeway do we have with that process and its timing to ensure that we don't work through that process and then we have to go out and do referendum as a separate thing outside of that process?
Yep.
And so how can we work that time and stretch it until we get clear direction from the government?
We haven't got much room for manoeuvre in terms of the timeline. We are working to what we know now. So we're not trying to second guess the government. We hear the government's position, but we're yet to hear any physical change in legislation. So we're working to what we know now, and we're taking the right advice. I don't know if you want to add anything, Jenny, but timeline wise, it's really tight, and we have to stick to those timelines, and we can't deviate from them.
Yeah, it's a case of working with the legislation that's in place at the moment. So we're absolutely required to go through that process. It's not great timing with the LTP either, because there could be, budget implications as well from the changes. But yeah, what we don't really want to see, but might happen, is that we've got somebody standing for a Maori ward in the elections, but where there's also a referendum run at the same time. That could happen.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
So on a completely different note, through you, Mayor, I'm looking at 5.5, the rahui that I believe is still in place. Can we have an update as to where we're going? And is it because we're still breaching from our wastewater treatment plant in Motueka that the rahui is still there? Or I'm a bit concerned about the messaging, because I'm very mindful that people are over it and are now utilising that space, whether that's safe or not.
Mr. Kirby, yeah.
Plant is back operating as it always has, prior to the problems we had in August. The iwi are the ones that decided to keep the rahui in place because they're not sure of the implications of the spills that did occur. We believe there's no issue, but they're wanting to have more checks done on the shellfish and the like. And I know they're working with various organisations like Cawthron and the like to find out some of that background information before they lift the rahui. So the decision is in their court as far as we're concerned. We're not discharging anything different than we were previously.
So, and I think the key point is, it's a really good point to raise, because for these, whether it's rahui or our own signage around collecting shellfish contaminated, if people just ignore it, which, as has been pointed out in here, rahui are not enforceable, and people lose the respect for the position of them, they become really ineffective. And it's not just rahui, it's our own signage. I was anecdotally advised of a situation in Kaiteriri by somebody not too far from me here, who sat and watched our council staff put up a sign saying, do not swim in the outfall, from the, like, literally half an hour putting a sign up, big sign right in front of and people just walked past, literally glanced at sign, went straight in the water and swam anyway. So much of this is down to people's respect for the sign or the rahui, and if it's sending mixed messages, it's not ideal. But I don't think that's something we can just pass back in the conversation. That it's difficult once people start to ignore it, and many people, actually, as pointed out here, don't even follow it in the first place, alongside our own warnings about the collection of shellfish or fishing. So, Councillor Greening.
Yeah, earlier in the week, I asked a question about item 8. Got a response from Richard Kirby last night. I'm just wondering whether that information can be tabled with this report, given it enlightens a lot of what is being set out there. And also, I just want to invite the CE to maybe clarify the FTE counts, given that other people may be confused by the numbers that were presented in this report.
I'll come to Leonie.
It's noted. Yes, we can share that around. That was the question around the resilience and when the decisions were made to put the money aside for work on this building. So thanks, Richard. That was a great response.
So just can I just clarify?
Yeah.
Because we've all been circulated the answer.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Green's request, which I
Yeah.
don't see any problem with, is
No.
just attaching it to the
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah,
Do that.
so that it's
Yep, absolutely. And the second one, look, apologies. I did say that the numbers are as at the end of December that I circulated to all councillors on Tuesday. Actually, it was at the end of January. So we've had the end of December and then we've had the January results. I asked for the latest results. I was given thinking they were December results, but the actual results for the end of January, which you're getting those ahead of time, is that we have 386 FTE on the payroll. Our headcount is 422. We're acquiring 20 vacancies, and we do look at delaying where we can. That's one of the levers we can pull. And there are 406 budgeted FTE. The overall budget for the year is 39 million, close to roundabout. And year to date, we are currently 412k under budget on the wage-related expense line. So we're and that trend looks like it's going to continue. So that's where we're at. So as I say, apologies. They do have this earlier than you would have got. You'll probably get this again next month, but getting them ahead of time.
okay. Thank you.
And can that clarification also be added to the minutes, please?
Yes. Right. If there's nothing further, has it been moved and seconded? Moved, Councillor Maru, seconded, Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Next up is my report. It's there for information. Probably the only thing I wanted to note, as has been touched on already, we are back in the merry-go-round of central government legislative change. Probably the difference between the previous 3 years of massive legislative change, it was very voluminous. It was extremely time-consuming and resource-hungry, and it never actually got implemented. So there was no real ability to judge whether the Natural and Built Environments Act would have been better or worse, whether the Three Waters proposals would have been better or worse, because they never actually got implemented. Pretty clearly, this government is not intending to make that same or follow that same path, because they are implementing things, both the repeal of existing legislation and the implementation of things like the fast-track consenting process, extremely rapidly. So their 100-day plan, which includes having the fast-track consenting process in Parliament by the 7th of March, is rapid by any stretch of the imagination. So, I guess they've seen what happened previously and the inability of the previous government to actually implement their reform program, and they are attempting certainly to make sure that they implement things. Now, there's pluses and minuses to that approach, as there are pluses and minuses to all legislative change, and particularly the fast-track consenting process will have a lot of benefits for a lot of people who are potentially trying to accomplish things that have historically been time-consuming, expensive and challenging. The flip side is it is almost inevitably going to involve less input, influence, involvement of other parties, and that's what it's, that's exactly what it's designed to do. So I guess we'll wait with interest to see the final details, but did I circulate a letter from Chris Bishop to councillors? But I think you can see from that letter what it's intended to achieve, what it's going to aim to do, and the time frame in which it's going to aim to do it. So, lots of changes, as also with the Three Waters and now local water done better or something, done well. That's what it is, local water done well. Which leaves some fairly yawning questions over affordability and funding and paying for. While it's wonderful to retain these great assets that are such a massive benefit to our communities, we also retain the challenge of funding them, upgrading them, fixing them, and ultimately replacing them. So that'll be interesting to see how that develops as well. But it is also likely to happen a lot faster than the previous government's Three Waters proposal. The only other thing I'll touch on is, and it's mentioned in here that I was invited to speak at Heath Wilkins' funeral. For those who are in the Motuaki community, you'll be well aware of Heath's involvement both in industry and the wider community and business. And it was a very large crowd. And the thing I wanted to comment on is that, to me, I guess it exemplified the very best of like Kiwi New Zealand. So you had everyone from leading business people, you know, the very top business people in the district from right across the region, through everyone who worked in that business and associated businesses, through to the RSE workers who sang at various stages throughout, and one representative from the RSE workers, I think from the Vanuatu contingent, spoke brilliantly. And funerals are not great at the best of times, but in many ways, if you could wrap up what that kind of couple of hours meant and the degree of cohesiveness / I don't know how else you put it, but yeah, if so many other things we do actually if you could bottle that and run it across all these other conversations we're having, and that's the thing I took away from it, both Heath's contribution to his community, the untimely death at a relatively young age. But what his funeral highlighted to me is that when we do what we do really well in this country, which is that kind of flat thing, everyone comes together, everyone knows that they all rely on each other to make stuff happen and get shit done, we're actually pretty bloody good. So I'll leave it at that. Someone like to move my report be received? Councillor McKenzie.
I will move, but I also wondered through you, Mayor, if you just wanted to mention the persistence of the Torrent Bay Community Association to get a solution to an affordable solution to their water issues, because I think that was really quite an outstanding achievement.
Yes, it was. So again, for those who don't know the background, Torrent Bay, small community in Able Tasman National Park, have their own drinking water supply that supplies, I'm thinking 20, 30 odd houses in that location, and was wrapped up in not the Three Waters debate, but the creation of Taumata Arawai, the drinking water regulator, which have very strict criteria about, what treatment you need to apply to community water supplies, which are anything more than 2 houses. And they have, as Councillor McKenzie persistently set out to gain themselves an exemption, and they were informed relatively late last year that they were successful, and they are the first community to gain exemption to the with conditions and specific requirements to the Taumata Arawai drinking water standards for community supplies. So a really good pragmatic solution, great work both from them, but also, to be fair, to particularly the regional people who represent Taumata Arawai to be open to the idea of a pragmatic and practical solution. So I'll move my report be received. Oh, okay. I'll second, or Councillor Shellcrash will second. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Now we move to go into committee. 2 items on the agenda: appointment of iwi representatives to the Operations Committee, and the Nelson Regional Sewerage Business Unit appointment of iwi representative. Can I have a mover that we go into committee? Move Deputy Mayor Bryant, seconded Councillor Dowler. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried.